This is a democratically elected president of a sovereign nation who has been invaded illegally by Vladimir Putin. He should be there on his merits, arguing the case that if it was any other country who'd had land taken away from them, they're not going to agree to that on a permanent basis. That's what success would look like.
Well, let's begin by talking about, well, is this a critical moment for Ukraine? We know that after the Alaska summit, that European leaders and President Zelensky are going to be having a meeting this afternoon. Then the Ukrainian President even, I don't know why I've just given him Prime Minister title, President is going to be flying to Washington to have another meeting with Donald Trump. What do you think, Paul Scully, a successful trip to Washington looks like from a Ukrainian perspective?
I would hope that success will look like President Zelensky getting more of an equal footing to Putin, because at the moment, Trump and Putin seem to be sidelining him, having their conversations, almost deciding what they want, and then delivering the message to President Zelensky. This is a democratically elected president of a sovereign nation who has been invaded illegally by Vladimir Putin. He should be there on his merits, arguing the case that if it was any other country who'd had land taken away from them, they're not going to agree to that on a permanent basis. That's what success would look like.
What does success look like for you, Christine?
Well, I think we all want to see an end to the war, and we all want to see a negotiation. We all want to see it end as quickly as possible, but we want to see Zelensky and Ukraine part of the negotiations. And I think it's important that we recognise that if Vladimir Putin comes away from this thinking that he'll get away with doing this again and invading another country and getting what he wants with the help of the American president, then he'll do it. And I think it's a huge strategic and defensive issue for all of Europe. And we have to be very careful. And like Paul, I think it's ridiculous that the democratically elected president of a sovereign nation has been a sort of side discussion, a side issue in peace talks between the presidents of the United States and Russia. That's just not acceptable.
I mean, the challenge here for Volodymyr Zelensky is a tricky line to tread. He needs to obviously defend Ukraine. Everything you've said there about, needing to be at the table and be respected. But equally, Paul, not allow it to descend into, well, the spectacle that was that meeting in the Oval Office back in February. And that's quite difficult to do that. How do you think he should approach it?
I think he's had subsequent conversations at the funeral of Pope Francis. He's spoken to Trump, and I hope there he was able to start to rebuild that relationship. It was very much of a set piece humiliation in the White House at that time. I think he's got to do his pre-prep for the meeting very, very carefully, rather than just going in, doing what he's done in other countries, including the UK, coming in as combats and expecting that respect, which we give him here in the UK. He knows it's a very different kettle of fish in America. So that preparation that needs to be different. But he does need to insist on that equal footing for the reasons that we were saying, because as Christine said, Putin won't stop there. Putin has said in the discussions with trying to move on to a permanent peace rather than just a ceasefire, he says he wants to tackle the underlying causes of the war. Well, the cause was in Putin invading, we know that. But that's code for going that little bit further, getting rid of Zelensky, all of the things that Putin has wanted long term, which he just can't have served up on a plate.
I wonder, Christine, if it will be slightly different this time as well. The dynamic will be slightly different, because the Sunday Times is reporting today that some European leaders could actually accompany Zelensky to Washington. We know, for example, that Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, does have a good working relationship with Donald Trump. He seems to listen to her and take on board what she says. And I wonder if that might slightly change the dynamic. Maybe as well, JD Vance not being in the room. Who knows?
I think that might be important, JD Vance not being in the room. And I think other European leaders there would make a difference to the dynamic. What we don't want is the spectacle that we saw the last time of Zelensky being ganged up on. On the other hand, we don't want it to make it look as if he needs support. So it's going to be a very delicate, difficult thing to do. I think, yes, it would change the dynamic, hopefully in a positive way. But I think the important thing is that we do manage to persuade Donald Trump that Ukraine is not a bargaining chip of his just to, build his relationship with Vladimir Putin or anything else for that matter, that this is a sovereign country that needs respect. And he needs to behave with respect towards another democratically elected leader.
We know, of course, that President Trump is keen on this idea of what he calls land swaps. And the Sunday Times is reporting today that Vladimir Putin is reportedly offering to freeze the front lines in two provinces that he claims, Kherson and Zaporizhia. In return, he wants to basically take over the Donbass, even parts of it that he doesn't even have control of at the moment. I just wonder, Paul, if we are ultimately going to come to a really uncomfortable reality, something that us in Europe will not find this acceptable. But the reality is that actually there will have to be land swaps to end this war. All we've done is delay the inevitable. This is the reality of wars.
It is, and it's an incredibly difficult and complex situation because, the example that's always been used is if the UK had been invaded, would you just let another country have Kent? Which county would you give them to end the war? So it's incredibly unpalatable. But you do have to come up with the reality of how are we going to sort this out. Putin will not just go back to Russia with his tail between his legs. He'll want something. I'm not sure in this case when I see what Trump is talking about, and he goes back to land and real estate, which is what he says he knows all about. I don't really see what's in it for Zelensky here because there's not much of a land swap. He's talking about freezing one thing and then giving away a whole another area.
Christine?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing that struck me. You can't be swapping land if Ukraine under this deal is only going to lose land. Where's the swap? If you freeze where it is and you give away part of Ukraine, what's in it for Ukraine? If you're going to have a negotiated peace, there has to be some negotiation. It can't just be this is what Russia wants, therefore you have to stomach it, because that would be handing Putin what he wants on a plate. On the other hand, we have to find a way of Ukraine coming out of this without feeling that they were invaded. They've been through horror for 3 years now, and what exactly has it cost them? And why at the end of the day it is still happening to them every single day. And I had Ukrainians in my constituency office this week, and one of the factors that dominates their life is the fear of being sent back or going back to Ukraine, which is now Russian, or that part of their homeland will no longer be their homeland. Their home will no longer be their home. That's what this war was about avoiding in the first place. We can't just hand it to Putin on a plate.
I mean, if there is a crumb of comfort for Ukraine and Ukrainians, the Sunday Times reporting today that European countries are increasingly confident that President Trump will agree to provide American security guarantees to Ukraine as part of any ceasefire deal. Essentially like a kind of Article 5 style pledge, that of being a member of NATO. If one is attacked, everyone responds. So Ukraine wouldn't become part of NATO, but they'd effectively have those guarantees if, after a ceasefire, Russia was to reinvade. A crumb of comfort, as I say.
Yeah, indeed.